Good day and welcome to a quick overview of the Transtheoretical Model for Change, an assessment and intervention process with thousands of well-designed research studies proving its effectiveness in changing errant behavior patterns in clinical settings and promises to have that same impressive effect in the schools. Although our research team is finding that a few modifications are needed for successful transfer into educational environments. Let's start with a question that's oftentimes heard in our IEP meetings and professional gatherings. What could be the reason that a research-proven or evidence-based intervention works wonderfully with one dysocial young person, but fails to positively impact another learner? Even our powerful procedures and programs that we see here, along with lack of fidelity and consistency to the plan, could the old common sense adage that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, be pertinent in addressing this question? The trans-theoretical model expounds this view when working with individuals in need of positive behavior change. But would this clinical model be applicable to children and youth in educational settings, especially those students whose action and reaction patterns violate school regulations, classroom decorum, and personal comfort and safety of oneself and others? We're talking about our students with persistent acting out behavior response patterns. And when we refer to externalizing behavior profiles, we're talking about children and youth who may or may not, depending upon the circumstances, qualify for the Federal Educational Special Needs category of emotional disturbance, or the DSM or ICD diagnoses of oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, or disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, but certainly do display pronounced and persistent acting out behavior patterns that concern school personnel. Behavior patterns described by one or more of these descriptors. A number of my colleagues come to mind, but I digress. The trans-theoretical model, so called because you can continue to adhere to your favorite intervention model, ABA, cognitive behavioral, social cognitive, social ecological, psychoeducational, whichever, and it intertwines nicely with any and all of them. In its standard form, it's a stages model with movement into each stage being dependent upon success in the previous stage. The TMC, Trans-Theoretical Model for Change, identifies the stage of willingness to engage in changing one's maladaptive ways and provides a general framework or avenue of approach for addressing the individual so that they are able to advance to the next stage. In a school setting, you or the IEP team would plug in your preferred strategies that match the focus of those recommended approaches in order to promote advancement to the next stage of motivation and readiness to change one's errant ways for the better. At any moment in time, most of us exist in the pre-contemplation stage. We have our habitual ways of addressing recurring situations. It takes something quite significant to shake up our world and give rise to consideration of other views and ways of doing things. We are, as they say, creatures of habit. Now, imagine that I asked you to change your political views to opposing positions, exchange your religious practices for those of another belief system, or replace the holiday traditions you celebrate with your family with the ones observed by my kinfolk. odds are you'd continue with your standard practices. Even considering change, as in the contemplation stage, is quite an undertaking. Perhaps the benefits of change are recognized as being superior to those received when showing the present reaction pattern, or maybe the person reaches rock bottom, so to speak, with the present behaviors and finally realizes that those actions are blocking access to a better life. Now, actually sketching out a change, a plan for change, is a monumental step. Making the decision to undertake change, despite the effort involved and the possibility of failure, is a precarious position in which to place oneself. Leaving behind the deeply ingrained automatic habitual ways is nothing to minimize. Humans show behaviors because there's benefits to doing so. If there wasn't a payoff for displaying our actions, we never would have adopted these behaviors in the first place and then kept them. Leaving those responses behind when they are now stimulus response type reactions, mechanical in nature, and now responding differently to recurring circumstances is a difficult undertaking, to say the least. It is a bold move to attempt to the change of one's ways, given that the present actions have been a significant part of one's life, integral to it. Maintaining that new response pattern is a tenuous endeavor at best. The allure of past response patterns is Lorelei-like, threatening to crash one back up onto the behavioral shoals. The replacement behaviors feel awkward and ill-fitting when they're first attempted, and their clumsy displays might not bring the promised benefits at this point. And in the standard clinical version of the TMC model, relapses or backsliding is to be expected. They refer to the return to the original aberrant behavior pattern. While witnessing periodic relapses are an exception for the mentor, to the previously enthused individual, the setbacks can be demoralizing. Failure can destroy one's motivation to continue the attempt to metamorphose oneself. So taking these steps and the relapse phenomenon into account, this is how the system operates. Our research is indicating there are two types of relapse or backsliding. With the proficient implementation of stage-aligned interventions, we will see advancement through the stages. However, it's not uncommon to see minor backslides or even major downfalls. There is some criticism in the professional literature regarding the model's separate stage structure, and our research aligns with that criticism of the distinct stages. There's been criticism of the standard TMC model's precise delineation of the stages. Various authors have pointed out that individuals don't suddenly jump from one level of motivation to another. So we're coming to view the behavior change process as being a transitional continuum upon which a transparent overlay with marked stages is placed. There is change both within and between the arbitrarily assigned segments called stages. We also see the preparation stage as including more than just having the motivation to make the change. In clinical settings, the mentor attempts to convince the individual that there are better ways of responding, and finally the individual says, yes, indeed, that's right, and does it. In the educational setting, we know that we need to teach kids what they don't already know. Our kids need training to be able to show those skills that aren't presently part of their behavioral repertoire. Typically, social emotional learning and social skills instruction takes place at the various levels of the PBIS model, positive behavior interventions and supports. Based on our research team's efforts, we're coming to disagree with the traditional model's view that a person exists in only one stage at a time. Perhaps it's more like a ladder in which we exist in varying mental states and inconsistency of physical actions from one minute to the next and day to day. But rather than the ladder analogy that we originally developed, our research team is now considering the idea that behavioral progress in our students might be more akin to a climbing gym. Progress, as shown in a previous slide, does not typically occur in a straight line. The same for regression and relapse. Change doesn't always take a straight path. Indeed, the path of change is typically askew. Sometimes change is resisted or especially difficult as one moves through the stages, and progress can be slow and grueling. And in the pre-contemplation stage, learners are not interested in engaging in the behavior displayed by others. However, with our stage-focused interventions, we can spark interest in the ways deemed to be appropriate in our classrooms and educational programs. Contemplation stage strategies convince the student to participate in the pro-social change process by getting mentally and behaviorally ready for engaging in the new patterns of action and reaction. Our preparation stage interventions spur the learner to make those first precarious attempts at the new ways. And with our support and action stage strategies, the learner becomes more comfortable and proficient in displaying the indicated actions. But trying new things is a tenuous undertaking at best. These novel new ways go against the grain of the habitual ones and don't feel natural, so to speak. Temptation to return to these former ways is ever present. But in the best of all scenarios, the learner eventually fully adopts the new ways for the educational setting, but usually after having experienced a number of regressions and relapses. But now, comfort and proficiency in the new behavior pattern exists. So then how exactly do we move our kids forward? Let's go back to those learners at the lower levels. How do we motivate our students with errant actions to move to higher levels of engagement in the behavior change process and then solidify those new ways? Progressing through the stages of change is dependent on three determinants. The first, processes. Processes are those general approaches in which we can plug into them our preferred interventions if and when they match the nature of that approach. Interventionists must also be aware of which processes are indicated for which stages of the model. We'll address that alignment in just a moment. Second, individuals must possess a firm belief in themselves, self-confidence, known as self-efficacy, that they believe in oneself that they can continue to be successful in the behavior change attempts. Our support helps them develop this trust in themselves. And third, making the conscious choice to move forward based on success due to our well-designed and nicely implemented support, and the resultant self-assurance that has emerged. So to promote behavioral success, the willingness and the readiness to move upward in the behavior change process to the final goal, we interventionists must use different approaches, different processes at different stages. Now, this table lists 9 of the 10 processes or approaches for promoting positive behavior change. It seems that consciousness raising, the 10th one, was left off the list. But consciousness raising involves creating an awareness of acceptable pro-social behavior that would replace the unacceptable, at least unacceptable to educational settings, response pattern. Each of the processes are assigned to a singular stage of change. Here they are, 10 processes, a tensum of general treatment approaches as they're aligned with a particular stage. You see them here in the rows next to the stages, both above and below, color-coded to match the stage for which they're indicated. If these strategies in the outer rows were used at any other stage of motivation and readiness, they'd be ineffective and perhaps even counterproductive because they don't meet the needs of the individual at that point in the change process. Using the TMC model as it applies to schools, we prescribe the building of positive student-adult relationships for the pre-contemplative stage and the use of encouragement and the identification of the benefits of changing in the contemplative stage. Role-playing of the replacement behaviors would be appropriate during the reparation stage. Oh, that positive student-teacher relationship, it's important at all stages. We need to build it, maintain it, and strengthen it. We have the greatest and perhaps sole chance to positively impact the target behaviors when we implement strategies aligned with the processes associated with the learner's stage of readiness and the willingness to change. Accompanying the processes, the first dimension of change is self-efficacy, believing in oneself and trusting oneself enough to load the "I'll give it a try" tray of the balance scale. Indeed, success and self-efficacy co-construct each other. Let's talk now about the third dimension, decisional balance, making the decision to stay at the present level of ability or to regress or relapse, or hopefully move forward into new and more demanding situational challenges. Decisional balance is especially important at the early stages of the model, but it's still present later in the change process when deciding to take the newly learned skill into a different setting and circumstances that are perceived to be more threatening and challenging. We put our finger on the scales, so to speak, with our stage-aligned interventions that are designed to tip those scales toward the side of deciding to move to the next stage or a more difficult task within that stage or phase of behavior change. One approach that's especially important in the early stages is engaging in mentor-guided instructors with the changer, the learner. And we want to address the pros and cons of changing or not changing. Now, note the orientation and the direction of the arrow. There is a psychological phenomenon that applies here. we tend to attend to and remember the last topic discussed. In this case, it's embedding the benefits of change into the mind of our focused learner, our changer, our student of concern. And here's another form that we can use to help students consider, well, what are the benefits and what are the drawbacks to changing stage and the present state of mind? And we do so with more specificity. How will it affect their school performance, their friends? How will it affect the family, their life long-term goals? As for how we go about implementing the trans-theoretical model for change in the schools, here are some steps for educators. Via our knowledge of the model and the assessment instruments that our research team has developed, we ascertain the learner's stage of readiness to change. We then identify the processes, those general approaches that are aligned with each particular stage. In step number 3, we're selecting preferred interventions that align with those processes. That's our next task. Those of you who adhere to the ABA model will implement different strategies than professionals who abide by psychoeducational, cognitive behavioral, ecological, social cognitive, or any of the other theoretical orientations. However, no matter which theoretical model on which you hang your hat, the prerequisite for success is a positive adult-student relationship. Our team has developed an assessment and intervention package that allows you to address the first 3 steps while adding those remaining components. Contact us at the addresses that you'll see at the end of this video. We are excited about our research thus far, and we continue to research the trans-theoretical model's impact on positive behavior change in the school. So we're wondering, would you like to team up with us to make a big positive difference in helping intervention-resistant kids make better behavior choices? In one or more of a series of investigations that promise to change and improve the ways that our field intervenes with these children and youth? A number of benefits accrue to those educational institutions that join us in contributing to this professional body of knowledge. We have a tall stack of gift cards to award to our partner schools. We'll donate a copy of my self-help book for intervention-resistant learners, that survival guide for kids with behavior challenges. And for those schools that participate at a significant level, I'll conduct free professional development sessions on one or more of the topics that you see here: classroom management, childhood trauma, or yes, the trans-theoretical model of change and how to make it work in your school. Professional development session with all the materials for assessing and prescribing interventions for kids with behavior challenges. If your school or district would like to get on board with us, please make us aware of that interest by contacting us at one of the addresses on your screen. Thank you and good day.